It was past midnight when a poor single dad heard a knock at his door. On the other side stood a frightened young woman with nowhere to go. He could have turned her away, but instead he chose kindness. What he didn't know was that this one decision would change his life forever. David sat at the edge of his worn-out kitchen table, the faint hum of the refrigerator filling the silence of the apartment. The table was cluttered with unpaid bills, final notice envelopes, and a half-empty coffee cup that had long gone cold. His eyes were heavy from another double shift, but rest was a luxury he couldn't afford. Every day felt like a balancing act, working 2 jobs, keeping food on the table, and trying to be both mother and father to his little boy, Ethan. The apartment was small and dimly lit, its peeling wallpaper and cracked floorboards a constant reminder of the life David struggled to hold together. Yet despite the weight pressing on his shoulders, there was one thing he never allowed to fade: hope. In the next room, Ethan slept soundly, his tiny frame curled beneath a blanket patched in several places. For David, that boy was the reason he endured it all. He often found himself standing at Ethan's doorway late at night, just to watch his chest rise and fall, reminding himself that love made the struggle worthwhile. David whispered lessons to his son that money could never teach. "We may not have much, Ethan, but we'll always have kindness. Kindness costs nothing, but it makes us richer than we know." Those words became their family motto, a shield against the harshness of the world. And though his body ached and his spirit often felt weary, David held on to a simple truth: tomorrow would come, and with it, another chance to fight for his son's future. Little did he know, one knock on the door would soon change both of their lives forever. The silence of the night was broken by a sudden, steady knock. David's heart skipped a beat. It was past midnight, and visitors were a rarity in his quiet, worn-down neighborhood. For a moment, he thought about ignoring it. After all, he was exhausted, and Ethan was asleep. But something about the sound felt urgent, almost desperate. Cautiously, David walked to the door and pulled it open. Standing on the doorstep was a young woman, no older than her early 20s. Her clothes were dusty, her hair tangled from the wind, and her eyes, red and swollen from crying, told the story of someone who had been wandering far too long. She clutched the strap of her small bag like it was the last thing she owned in the world. "Please," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I just need somewhere safe for tonight." David froze. His mind raced to Ethan, asleep in the small bedroom just down the hall. He thought of the dangers of trusting strangers. Yet, as he looked into the girl's frightened eyes, he didn't see a threat, he saw someone broken, someone in need. His chest tightened. He knew what it felt like to be helpless, to not know where to turn. Slowly, he stepped aside and gestured toward the couch. "You can stay here tonight," he said gently. The girl's shoulders sagged with relief. She whispered a quiet "thank you" as she stepped into the warmth of the apartment. David closed the door, lock. Inside the small apartment, the atmosphere was quiet but heavy with unspoken emotions. The young woman sat cautiously on the edge of the couch, her hands wrapped tightly around the warm bowl of soup David had given her. She introduced herself with a faint, almost hesitant smile. "My name is Emily," she said softly, her voice barely rising above a whisper. Beyond that, she offered no details, no story, no explanation. David didn't press her. He could see in her tired eyes that she had already endured more than enough for one night. Instead, he simply nodded and replied, "You're safe here." His tone carried no judgment, no suspicion, only a quiet reassurance. As the clock ticked past 1 in the morning, a small sound came from the hallway. Ethan, awakened by the unfamiliar voice, wandered into the living room, rubbing his sleepy eyes. His hair was tousled, and he carried his blanket, dragging it along the floor. When he spotted Emily, he paused. In his innocent, childlike way, he tilted his head and asked gently, "Are you okay? Daddy says we should help people when they're sad." The room seemed to freeze for a moment. Emily's lips trembled as tears welled up in her eyes. No one had spoken to her with such sincerity in a long time, not in the world she came from, where appearances and wealth often mattered more than genuine care. David placed a comforting hand on his son's shoulder. "Back to bed, buddy," he said softly. Ethan nodded, but not before offering Emily one last sleepy smile. Emily wiped her tears quickly, embarrassed, but also strangely comforted. In this tiny, worn apartment, among strangers who had little to give, she felt more human, more cared for, than she ever had in her entire life of privilege. When David woke the next morning, the couch was empty. Emily was gone. For a moment, he wondered if he had imagined it all, until he noticed a small folded note resting neatly on the table. In delicate handwriting, it read, "Thank you for your kindness. You'll never know how much it meant to me." David sighed, slipping the note into his pocket. He didn't know where she had gone, or what had brought her to his door in the first place. All he knew was that she had needed help, and for one night, he had given her that. To him, that was enough. A week later, as David returned home from another long shift, he froze at the sight of a sleek black car idling in front of his worn-down apartment building. Its polished surface gleamed against the cracked pavement, out of place in his humble neighborhood. The back door opened, and to his astonishment, Emily stepped out, this time transformed. Her hair was neatly styled, her clothes elegant, her posture confident. 2 bodyguards trailed behind her. "Emily?" David asked in disbelief. She smiled, but her eyes carried the same softness he had seen that night. "I owe you the truth," she said quietly. She explained how she was the daughter of a powerful millionaire, raised in a life of privilege but surrounded by coldness, expectation, and pressure. That night, she had run away, desperate to feel something real, something human. "You gave me what money could never buy," Emily continued, her voice trembling. "Kindness without conditions. You didn't ask who I was, or what I could give in return. You just cared." David stood speechless. In that moment, he realized his simple act of compassion had touched someone far beyond anything he could have imagined. Word of David's quiet act of kindness reached further than he could have ever imagined. Emily's father, a man of immense wealth and influence, was deeply shaken when his daughter told him the story. For all his money, he had failed to give her the one thing she craved most, genuine compassion. And yet, a man with almost nothing had given it freely. One afternoon, David received an unexpected visit. Emily stood at his door again, but this time, her father was with her. The older man extended his hand with tears in his eyes. "You sheltered my daughter when she was lost," he said. "I can never repay you, but I want to help you the way you helped her." David shook his head humbly. "I didn't do it for anything in return. I only did what was right." But even without asking, change began to unfold. Ethan was enrolled in a good school, his future secured. The heavy burden of overdue bills disappeared quietly, eased by the gratitude of a powerful man. More than financial help, though, what grew was a friendship, an unlikely bond between 2 families, built not on wealth, but on kindness. That night, after tucking Ethan into bed, David paused at the doorway. His son's sleepy voice called out, "Daddy, are we rich now?" David smiled softly. He sat on the edge of the bed and whispered, "Riches aren't about money, son. Remember this, one act of kindness can change everything." Ethan nodded sleepily, a smile spreading across his little face. And in that quiet moment, David knew that despite all the struggles, the lesson he had passed on to his son was the greatest gift of all.